Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from the world today. Welcome to Immersed. Immersed is our new monthly seminars to explore how immersive technologies, whether it be motion capture or AR and VR, are used to understand and manipulate and interact with data. My name is Brian Anthony. I'm the Associate Director of MIT.nano. I'm joined today in Immersed by Praneeth Namburi, who's the manager of the Immersion Lab, and Todd Carroll. Todd is the MIT pitching coach, and he's been the pitching coach since January of 2010, entering his 12th season at MIT. And if you don't know, MIT has a pretty strong history in Division III and consistently ranks in the top of Division III. And the pitching crew, the pitching staff, the pitching coach has a lot to do with how we think about the biomechanics and the delivery of the ball to the bat. So what Todd will share with us today is a little bit of a perspective in terms of contrast on how pitching is taught today with the more traditional, if you will, from 20 years ago, and the innovations that he's been putting into place and the innovations that we can now explore through the Immersion Lab at MIT. Todd, Praneeth, thank you for joining us today. Todd, I'll turn it over to you. I very much look forward to your words of pitching wisdom, and take it away.
All right, thanks, Brian. I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. There we go. Yes, Brian mentioned that we are proud of our program here at MIT. I've been at MIT for 12 years, and one of the cool things of our campus is that there's so many successful people out there doing amazing things on campus, and we don't always know about each other. So projects like this are great, where we can get a little exposure for ourselves and our athletic department, and hopefully, provide some exposure for what people are doing on the other side of Mass Ave, and get people working together. So you can see a little bit of the success we have. We pride ourselves as a program where obviously everybody's chasing that degree up in the top left-hand corner, but they can chase a baseball championship on the right. That's our team winning it in 2015. They can be Major League Baseball draft picks, as both of those guys are down the bottom. Austin Fuller went in the 8th round of the draft in 2017. His teammate David Hesslink went in the 34th round of that draft and now works in the Seattle Mariners front office. We think he's going to be a general manager someday. So MIT, in addition to producing all the academic rock stars, we have the biggest athletic department in the country at the Division III level, and we think we're doing some great things over on our side, while not making a single compromise on the academic side. Both of those kids, David Hesslink was a 36 ACT. Austin Fuller had a 780 on his math and was a valedictorian, and he graduated in 3.5 years while becoming an 8th round draft pick. So it's a special place, and we're glad to be a part of it. Getting into today's topic, measuring in inexact science. So anything that we do as far as overhead throwing is really, really hard to say this works for everybody. So in that picture is Tom Brady. That's him at the draft in 1999. Tomorrow night is the NFL draft, which is why I chose Tom for this. Tom went 199th overall. That means the greatest quarterback of all time had 198 players selected before he went. All right, so it's certainly not a perfect science. And so things tend to evolve. What we have here on this slide is a little bit of the way that we taught through the years. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, that's Sandy Koufax, who was probably the best pitcher in the 1960s. Roger Clemens, the best pitcher in probably the 80s and 90s, is above him wearing the Astros shirt. To his left, Zach Greinke, who's been one of the better pitchers over the course of the last 20 years. And in the bottom left, that's David Price, who was here with the Red Sox, won a World Series, and then left to pitch with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, to the layman's eye, this all looks pretty similar. Right, so some of the things that we teach you, if I'll move with my cursor, we teach a strong front side. So that means this is our directional side. So if I'm working with a 5-year-old and I want to teach him to throw the baseball the first time, I tell him, this is your steering wheel. Wherever this goes, the baseball is going to go. All right, we talk about having a strong spine posture, so the spine's straight up and down. All right, we talk about getting the baseball up above the elbow when the foot strikes. So all of these guys have that in common. What's happened over the last 5 or 6 years is, thanks to technology, we've got way better at it. So This is everybody in 2019 that threw a pitch over 100 miles an hour, which was unthinkable 20 years ago, that you could have 12 guys in a frame. You might have one every 10 years. And there was 12 in that frame, and there will be probably 20 to 25 major leaguers that are throwing over 100 miles an hour this year. So you can see they have a lot in common with what the old time throwers had, but they're starting to get big time stretch. All right, we call that hip shoulder separation. All right, when their foot lands. So this shows them all at foot strike. They all have great posture. You know, their heads are right at the home plate. The ball is above the elbow. All right, a lot of similarities there. And you're going to see that when we worked with Praneeth, how much more athletic he gets when he starts extending his stride and getting more athletic through the delivery. All right, I think you can teach posture, body control, things like that. In addition to my coaching career, I've been a teacher during my whole career. I'm currently teaching middle school special ed. For a while, I was teaching pre-K through grade 8 physical education. And you learn an awful lot when you teach the munchkins. When somebody drops a pre-kindergarten class off in the gym, they can't wait to get out of there. That's their only 45-minute break. So this was Easter weekend at a Catholic school, and we were doing bunny hops. And I just want to show how we can teach motor control in kids that don't have a bunch of bad habits built up.
Bunny hop! Bunny hop!
All right, so now we are going to go through our journey with Tom House, who's really the father of modern pitching. Tom House, for those that may not be baseball gurus, Tom House caught the home run that Henry Aaron hit to break Babe Ruth's record back in 1974. He's been a pitching coach since the late 70s. He did a lot of things early that we didn't like. So this is one of his drills from 20 years ago that I hated. I used to sit with our coaching staff and say, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Sean Havland, who's now the Red Sox director of minor league pitching, once asked me what I thought of towels, and I said they are great. Every time I get out of the shower, I use a new one. So this is Tom House.
Wrist weights in his glove, all right? Now, Mike didn't even know I was going to ask him this. What's the idea behind the weight in the glove, Mike? Any idea at all?
To let you know where your front arms, if it's pulling you.
Bingo, you've been paying attention. Good for you. If you take 2 4-pounds in your glove and you direct it properly, you don't even know it's there. But if you have 2 or 4 pounds in your glove and you get outside your body with it, if you pull violently with it, it feels like 25 or 40 pounds. So 2 pounds directed properly, no problem at all. And what he's going to do in the towel drill here, or the two of them are going to do it, they're going to start off right at the cut of the grass. On flat ground, he's going to take a normal delivery. Go ahead and do that. By the way, he's got size 17 feet. Give or take, what are they really, 15s? 17s? Yeah, he does have size 17 feet. You'll notice wherever his 17 foot just landed, Brian is going 5 feet from there. The drill on flat ground is calibrated at stride plus 5 feet. Then what Brian will do is hold his hand Mike's belly button height. And what Mike is going to do is come out of a regular stretch position, put glove here, put eyes here, and put towel here. You should get him pretty easy. And from this side, I'll talk about, go ahead. Couple deliveries. And you'll notice now from this camera's angle.
All right, as you can see now on my towel drills, I hate this drill. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. That's me in 2006. All right, Tom House on his next. Camp with Nolan Ryan.
Because of his body and his arm strength, but he really wasn't a dominating high school pitcher. He signed to go to Vanderbilt, went there last year, didn't pitch all that well, decided he wanted to transfer. His uncle is Tim Foley. Tim knew Tom from years ago. Finally, after he'd heard from a bunch of people, including me, for 3 or 4 years that he needed to work on his functional fitness, he hit the bottom, decided to ask for help, came to Tom, got on the right functional fitness program, consistently throwing 95, low in the strike zone, nasty curveball. He's going to change Santa Clara's program around this year.
The
key to the thing is he committed to what he didn't want to do, functional strength. Now, when did you finally put all the pieces together strength-wise?
I think it's 24, 25. But I think, like with these younger kids, the fact that they have the knowledge now and they know what to do, I think they'll cut that down. I think they'll cut that time frame down, but and have more consistent success earlier.
Did you hear what he just said? This information/instruction, you guys that are really good will probably get to the big leagues. You'll get there sooner because of the quality of information and instruction that you've R&D'd and you're applying. What's his back shoulder doing there? 45 degrees. The best in the game get close to 90 degrees.
So there's Tom talking about the back shoulder getting close to 90 degrees. We've learned that that's not important anymore. Tom would be the first person to tell you that. So if he was here sitting in on this. This is him working through his share of things with Mark Pryor was held up as the guy. If anybody has perfect, mechanics, anyone's ever going to stay healthy, it's going to be Mark Pryor. He pitched for the Cubs back when Kerry Wood was there. We're talking early 2000s, so 01, 02, 03. And then funny thing happened. Mark Pryor got hurt. And that wasn't supposed to be able to happen. And so that was me saying, see, I told you guys that. I actually got in a huge argument at a convention one year predicting that injury. And I will never do that again because shame on anybody that predicts an injury with kids or adults. It's just not a path that I want to go down. I'll try to tell our players, hey, if you keep going down this path, you're exposing yourself to injury. But I would never try to predict an injury. There's too many people on Twitter doing that, and that's not how we want to go. All right, this next video. Now, this is, as you can see, Tom's starting to talk about different things because that's a lifelong learner. This 2.5-minute video is going to talk a lot about some of the things that we're going to study when we get Praneeth in the lab.
The pay is awesome.
Aroldis Chapman's 105-mile-an-hour heater is the fastest pitch ever thrown. And that pitch wasn't a fluke. In 1 1/3 innings, Chapman threw 25 pitches, and every one of them was clocked at over 100 miles an hour. But how does he do it? Pitching coach Tom House has worked with some of the game's hardest throwers, including Nolan Ryan and Randy Johnson.
What you have here is a CC Sabathia upper body and a Randy Johnson lower body. That's why he throws 105 miles an hour.
First, his stride. The typical stride length for a pitcher is about 87% of his height, but Chapman's stride averages 120% of his 6'4" height, approaching 7.5 feet. His stride isn't just long, it's fast, taking only 0.8 of a second, 15% faster than average pitchers. Next, shoulder turn. The twisting angles between his front hip and his back shoulder create massive torque.
80% of velocity comes from hip and shoulder separation.
Elite power pitchers like Randy Johnson create angles of 40 to 60 degrees, but Chapman's is close to 65 degrees. Next, delivery.
The thing that separates him is a lot of pitchers could get to that, but how soon does it get to here?
The average pitcher uncocks his forearm in 7 to 9 hundredths of a second. Chapman's arm fires in less than 4 hundredths of a second. Average pitchers release the ball directly over the front foot. Chapman's release point, up to 12 inches in front of his foot, amplifies the difficulty of hitting him.
Not only does he throw hard, he throws close. 1 foot of distance is 3 miles an hour to the hitter's eyes. So not only on the real gun, 105, but you could almost add 3 more miles an hour to that. You may be looking at the hardest throwing individual that's ever been on this planet.
And when you're trying to hit the planet's fastest pitcher, there's virtually no time to think. Facing a 90-mile-an-hour pitch, a batter has 9 hundredths of a second to decide whether or not to swing. But if Chapman unleashes a 105-mile-an-hour missile, that window shrinks by 66%. The batter must make his decision in only 3 hundredths of a second. For Sports Science on ESPN, I'm John Brankus.
All right, so a couple huge takeaways that we use in our program almost every day. We are constantly chasing extension. He talked about 12 inches looks 3 miles an hour faster to the hitter. What the hitter sees is all we care about as pitchers at the college level, because all that matters is what they're perceiving. So that perceived velocity, we're chasing that all the time. You see hip shoulder separation. You're going to see when we get Praneeth hooked up to all the technology that we can extend his stride really easy. It's just keeping the hip shoulder separation is the challenge. That's where the flexibility comes in. All right. And then we're going to talk about finally the math of it right here with this last video. Ground force production, which is when I asked a Major League Baseball organization, what's their biggest thing that they want to measure? They want to measure ground force. All right. And we can do that through our technology in the lab. And we're going to continue to keep exploring it. But that's what Major League Baseball wants from us. So let me see if I can open this thing. There we go. Another short clip, but same guy again, Tom House.
When we're talking functional strength training, it is ground force production, torque, and weak length training. So when we're talking functional strength, it's ground force production, torque, and weak length training. What does that mean? Can anybody tell me what ground force production is?
Amount of force needed to move the mass.
You're both right. Give me a measurable. What's the formula? Force
Times mass equals acceleration.
Okay? When we're talking mechanics, we are assholes when it comes to the...
All right. So we did get a swear there. I tried to cut it off. Force equals mass times acceleration. All right. So how fast can we move your body while holding the ground? You're going to see that as we go into it. All right. And then just one last clip with how good Tom House has become because of studying this stuff. The first couple minutes of this, you're going to see him working with some of the best quarterbacks in the league that are all, the draft picks tomorrow night are going to try to replace. And that the relevance of this is that I think we can use this technology not just to help our baseball program at MIT. I think we can use it to help our field hockey team. I think we can use it to help our soccer team. I think we can use it to help professors hit a golf ball further. All right. So there's a limitless feature to that. And that's why this part is relevant here.
How did I know that Tom Brady?
Sorry for the app.
How did I know that Tom Brady needed a little help with his front side elbow? Because he was missing high and low. When you miss right and left, it's your head. When you miss high and low, it's your front side elbow in his case. Tom House, Thomas R. House, PhD, performance analyst. My two Hall of Famers are Brady and Breeze. People don't realize how hard they work to get 1% better. There's a lot of technology out there. We're one of the few facilities in the world where we can actually give you a deliverable. We work with all rotational athletes, any throwing or striking sport. But me personally, I'm working with the elite NFL quarterbacks and a lot of the elite Major League Baseball pitchers. Rotational athletes, throwers and strikers, are all the same animal. The only thing that might change is the timing of a weight transfer. Virtually everything else is the same. If you can teach hitting, you can teach pitching. If you can analyze quarterbacking, you can analyze hitting a volleyball. In effect, we are now helping all athletes, male and female, no matter what the age, in any rotational sport that's out there, even cricket. All right, so it's all good stuff. It's all science-based, it's objectively researched, it's a deliverable that is measurable and defendable. What I found with the elite, they are very receptive if they can understand what you're telling them and they think it's going to improve them. The cool thing about working with the older guys.
All right, so that becomes a little bit of a deep dive, but we want to leave it some time here to discuss exactly what we did in the lab at MIT. But I think that, you know, his point that if we can measure things in baseball players, we can measure it in volleyball players. We can measure it in cricket players. I see people playing cricket out by our field all the time at MIT. All right, you know, we can certainly measure it in golfers. You know, we can certainly, there's probably some uses for it from a basketball standpoint that I don't know as well. So I am going to turn it over now to Praneeth, who's going to introduce his slides and some questions that he's got for me. Praneeth, you there, bud?
Thank you, Todd. Give me 1 second while I share my screen.
All right.
All right. Excellent. So why don't I talk a little bit about what we did with Todd in the lab, and then I'll show some analysis, ask some questions that came up during my session with him. So Todd came over and I put on these, this is what I'm showing you in this slide is the motion capture technology. On the right, you see a video of me wearing these infrared reflective markers. Hopefully time permits, and then I can show you, we'll do a live demonstration. So here's an example of what that looks like. So on, in the middle, you see, you can track these points through space. So you can really study how you can, the first step to understanding what happens is measurement, right? So this is how we measure positions of points in space. But in addition to that, we, as Todd mentioned, we can also measure many different physiological variables. Again, there's a lot going on in this video where I've combined physiological measurements with motion capture. Let me introduce you to what you're seeing. There's a lot going on. I'll play the clip once, and then I'll show you what's happening. I'll tell you what's happening. Okay, so let me pause somewhere here. As you can see, in the top video, under my right shoulder, there is a little sensor. So what that measures is it measures the activity of my rotator muscles, which is shown in green. And it also measures the acceleration of that point in space, which means it tells me how quickly I'm turning my shoulder. We're going to see that in a little bit. In the bottom, I'm wearing sensors inside my foot that shows me the pressure on the foot. So you can see I go into my foot before I start rotating. And then as I go a little further, I push into the foot and then come out. So if you measured a professional athlete, you would see a much more stark difference. So these are all the different things we measured. And I thought I could share some observations. So the first question is, we did this in a format where Todd gave me a 20-minute pitching lesson. So the first question I wanted to know was, I'd never pitched before, never played baseball. How did my pitching change or evolve throughout the session? So I'm going to share with you stills from one moment throughout the sessions, throughout pitches in the session. So it's the moment when my shoulder girdle starts rotating. So I can measure this because of the sensor I put on my shoulder. And what I'm going to show you is the pose from which I start the shoulder rotation. And and I'm going to flash some slides from the beginning of the session to the end. So here's in the beginning of the session. You can see this is the moment, if you watch the video on the top left, this is the moment where I start rotating my shoulder girdle, right? And then as the session evolves, this changes. How I look when my shoulder starts rotating changes. So consistently, it looks like I'm starting to rotate before my front foot hits the ground. And you can also measure the posture in the beginning and the end, right? So I've given these a couple of guiding lines in yellow. So this is in the first pitch, beginning of session. And here's the end of the session, a lot more straight and simpler, which at least in my dance training is told is better. Okay, and then I wanted to I want to ask Todd if he has any comments on what he sees in the stuff that I've shared.
Unmute. Okay. Can you hear me, Praneeth?
Yes. Now we
All
can.
right.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing early on, you know, we talked about that hip shoulder separation, and you can see your shoulder wants to start rotating early. So in inexperienced throwers, we want to delay that as much as we can. And one of the ways that we delay it is by holding the ground as long as we can with our back foot. So that's why we tied those two things together. So the elite throwers, when you watch Aroldis Chapman throw 105 miles an hour, he's got like 65 degrees of separation, where you're probably more 25, 30. And so your lower half, you start to see as you get into better postural positions, all right, your spine straight up and down. We're in a really athletic position there in that last frame. All right, we're able to use our shoulders. We're symmetrical there. All right, so you were able to increase your stride length during the process. Just the hip shoulder separation, holding the back foot was a challenge for you as an inexperienced thrower. But we can clearly see that. And now when I bring my athletes over who do have more experience, I can show them exactly when they lose that with the back foot.
Cool. So yeah, we can use these tools as to better to improve the channels of communication between the coaches and the athlete. I wanted to share the beginning and end pitch in the form of a video. So that's the beginning. This is the end. What I also want to share with you is
so Praneeth, it might be worthwhile playing the video again, not knowing how the Zoom connection is. I know on my side it was coming through a little choppy, so it might be worth if you want to have the participants.
One more time. Did it come through okay? So
that one was a little choppy. It got you at the beginning and then it cuts it off.
I see. So maybe I'll try to go frame by frame. Oops, maybe I can't go frame by frame. So let's go to this point. Let's go through the motions. So I'm going to release the ball, presumably somewhere here. What you see are there. Between this frame and this frame, if I were to actually release the ball, I would release somewhere there. And what I can see from the accelerometer is that my shoulder becomes a little unstable. And then the muscles start kicking in. So this could be I don't know if this is true, but this could be a measure of predicting or helping abate injuries or prevent injuries in athletes. So these are some of the types of things we can see.
Yeah, we're going to use that. We have a rehabbing athlete right now coming off a torn labrum. So we're going to get him in the lab and see if we want to accelerate his shoulder rotation actually right now, because he's at the point where he's getting healthy and he needs to trust it. So I think showing him the science behind it, that, hey, you're okay, and showing him exactly how much impact that's making on his shoulder is going to be really, really beneficial. That's a big part of injury recovery, is trusting the process. Because when you're talking about an 18, 19-year-old athlete, especially one that's at a school like an MIT, those kids have had a lot of success in their life. You know, they're straight A students, they're recruitable college athletes. So an injury that knocks them down for a year is in a lot of cases the most traumatic event that's happened in their life. So part of getting them back is being able to show them, like, no, it's no worse than it was when we were doing it out on the field. Like, you're going to be okay. And they can find some comfort in the data because they're math science people anyway. So they're going to find comfort in that data, and it's going to allow them to push through some things.
Cool. And I had a couple more. Here's an example. So what I wanted to share now and discuss a little bit is we contrasted the beginning and the end and how my posture changed throughout the beginning and end of a 20-minute session. And what I want to show right now is a couple of corrections that Todd talked about. Maybe he could describe what this is and how he offered these corrections. So I'll play the video first. Todd, maybe you could talk about what you meant by the Ferris wheel and then what correction you offered.
Yeah, so I mean, when Praneeth first goes to throw the ball, he like pulls it out and just kind of flips it forward, where we want his body to rotate around his spine. But right there, we want it to go around his spine and then over a strong front side. And we talk about that we talked about it with the videos. Tom House talked about that. So it's going to rotate around 2 fixed points. He loses the fixed point of his front side there. All right, and he loses his posture a little bit too. His posture is going to increase dramatically as he goes. So we have nothing to rotate around. So the ball just kind of acts like it's on a Ferris wheel. It's just whoop, up here. And so there's no whippiness in his arm. And that's one of the ways that velocity happens.
And then here is immediately after, this is the pitch, immediately after he asked me for the correction. Maybe you could comment on this part a little bit.
Yeah, right after the leg lift, Praneeth, if you could pause it. Even way before that. So right after you lift your leg up, your left leg back towards the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep going back, please. Back a little bit further. So right there. So go 1 frame forward from there after you break your hands. No, forward now. Now towards
yeah.
the throw.
Yeah. Here.
Keep going. Keep going. One more.
One more. A little more.
A little more.
Little more.
Yeah, I want to see your hands break. I want to see the ball get up.
I see. I get it. Somewhere here.
So you can see now, look at his shoulders, the way that's working. He's starting to get some separation. All right, that's that stretch. If you go back to the clip I put up of all the people that throw 100 miles an hour. Now, Praneeth's not going to throw 100 miles an hour. If he is, then he's going to sign a contract for a lot of money, and I'm going to get a big-time job if we teach Praneeth how to throw 100 miles an hour. But he's starting to get that stretch right there. That looks so much more like the guys that are pitching in the big leagues than just his first one, because he's pretty athletic. He has a dancing background. He understands how his body's supposed to move in space. So he made that correction pretty good. He's started, as you see now, he's starting to lean forward with his bottom foot. So that's when his posture goes. So we want to hold that posture as long as we can. He's just not used to doing that yet.
Somewhere there?
Yep.
Yeah. I see. Excellent.
So because he lost his posture so early, when he lands, it takes him a while to recover. A major league pitcher is going to throw over a really like a straight line front leg. And he has trouble getting into that position, but he gets way closer to it towards the end of our time together.
So another thing we tried was the chair exercise. I'll show you what this looks like, and maybe Coach Todd could explain what it is.
Yeah.
I'll play it one more time, and I'll play it as and you can talk over it.
Okay. Yeah. If you could just keep that playing as you go.
Yeah.
So anybody that's worn a pair of sneakers knows that all our protection is in the heel. All right. So when we try to have ground force, we want to stay connected with our back foot. We have to grab the mound with our whole foot. And we're not used to doing that. All right. As athletes, as human beings, all right, we don't walk around barefoot very much. So we'll actually have our pitchers will do this to try to gain some proprioception with their back foot, some awareness of what their body's doing. All right. But what the cue here that I gave to Praneeth was to act like there's 3 marshmallows there. So there's one under his toes, one under the ball of his foot, and one under his heel. And I wanted him to smush all 3 marshmallows before he goes further. All right. So you watch how athletic a position that starts to put him in as he goes through. Watch how he holds his posture now all the way through.
Oops.
That's okay. But now your hips opened up there, and we got that hip shoulder separation. All right, and we can measure how much that helped you because of this drill.
Yeah, exactly.
So right there at foot strike, your foot is tethered to the ground. So watch when your front foot goes down. Right there, he was tethered. All right, that's the longest he held it. And I'm telling you right there, that moment right there, from there to when he gets into layback with the arm, there's not a whole lot of difference there between that position and what our athletes are doing. What you'll see is he's probably striding 65, 70% of his height, where our guys are probably pretty close to 100% of their height. An elite guy like an Aroldis Chapman, you know, was 120% of his height if we go back to that video. But you can see some of those things that we can measure that at how long he can hold that back foot on the ground. That's really cool to me. I geek out on things like that.
Yeah, so maybe I could share with you. Oops. Give me a second.
Well, Praneeth is resharing his screen. I wonder if you could comment a little bit just in terms of, like, now that you've been able to get Praneeth to improve his motion, how do you get him to sort of lock it in and sort of get it to be innate?
Yeah, so there's, I mean, you know, Malcolm Gladwell will tell you that he's got to practice that delivery 10,000 times, right, till it becomes natural. I don't think he needs that. I think, you know, through technology, he can check himself. We can speed that process up. I think that's the whole idea of this, is that we can go from, you know, the 10,000 repetition rule. We can cut that down. If we can cut that down to 2,000 reps, imagine the time we're saving. And, you know, time is so important to MIT student athletes. They just don't have enough of it, right? They're not sleeping enough. They get problem sets keeping them up all night. All right. If we can find a way to help them improve athletically while not taking up as much time, that's what they're all after. All right. And that's people that are doing 6 different things at once on campus. If we can have a time saver that keeps people healthy and gets them better, well, that's pretty awesome. What Praneeth is showing right now is how his posture stayed. So Praneeth, I'll let you roll. We talked about this a little bit before the meeting today, but this is showing how his posture stays during the 2 different times. This is like your first throw and your last throw. Is that right, my friend?
Right. So the white one is the first throw. The purple one is the last throw.
Okay.
And one of the things I wanted to bring to the attention that you can see very clearly is you can contrast the stride lengths. You can see the position of my feet much further apart. And the other thing you saw when I showed you this was the position of my spine somewhere in the middle here. As I throw, I kink my spine in the end. So if I can combine the stride length without kinking the spine, you said we could get much further.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to like an elastic, right? We're winding up an elastic, and the further back you can go, the more poof, we're gonna let that thing fly. So yeah, the longer you can hold your posture kind of before letting it spin, we're in business.
Yeah. So I'll take this as an opportunity to say that we are developing tools in the lab that, you know, we have the real world scenario in mind, and we are developing tools that can be helpful. And I'm sure in the audience, you can think about ways to apply these tools and technologies to many different aspects. And another thing we can do is visualize the trajectory side by side. So what I'm showing is the path my wrist took as I threw. So
this is going to answer Brian's question a little bit. Brian, this is going to show how much more consistent Praneeth's arm path got just during the course of 20 minutes.
So here's the evolution over the course of 20 minutes. And then in the end, I'm going to show you all of them together. So there it is. So the blue one is the first one, right? So it takes a much more roundabout route compared to in the end. It's much more streamlined and facing forward towards the end. All right. So
much more efficient. And then the efficiency, what that means to me as a pitching coach is when we're being efficient, we're not putting the elbow at risk. So we're cutting down the Tommy John surgeries, which the lay person that's a baseball fan has probably heard that term. You know, that's when when we lead with this part of our elbow, all right, because we put it in an awkward position, that's where injury comes from. So the more consistent we're getting and the more natural arm path we're taking, all right, the healthier the student athlete's going to stay.
Yeah. So maybe we're going to take 5 minutes to try to show you, to give you a taste of what motion capture technology feels like. So with me, I have a demonstrator, Maria, who is a student in the lab. And then she's going to throw some baseballs in the net towards the back. So Sharice, if you could you have already spotlighted the video. Okay, so these are the motion capture. I don't know if you can hear me, but these are the motion capture markers that I'm going to put on Maria. And then you can see parts of her glow in the video to your right. And then you can see those positions of those points in the 3D space.
Yep. Praneeth, just so you know, we can hear
Pretty
you when
keep
you're
in
near
mind.
the camera. Once you start to walk away, we lose you on the audio. So like when you're within, 4 or 5 feet, we're good. But once you walk over to where she's going to be throwing, you're going to lose the audio a little bit.
Cool. I'm just going to set her up and come back to the microphone and she'll be over there. Maybe. Okay, so now you can see Maria. She's going to take a ball and try to pitch, and Coach Todd is going to give her some feedback. Hopefully the video is coming through.
Yeah, the video is great. Go ahead and try again. Let me see one more before I coach you up. Okay, stop right there. Oop.
Stop when he says stop. Pick it up. Pick up another ball.
All right, we're gonna go. No, don't do anything yet. Don't do anything yet. Put your feet together, Maria. Okay, good. Put your hands together. Like your ball's in a glove. Okay, now you're gonna take a little baby step back with your left foot. Yep. Then you're gonna pivot your right foot a little bit, like a 2/3 turn. Yep. Now, as aggressively as you can, step towards that target with your left hip, and then let it fly. Whoa, she got way better. All right. Now, do everything you just did, but keep that front forearm pointing at your target.
The free one, right?
Yes, the free one, her left side.
Your left side.
That's the steering wheel. Where that goes, the ball's gonna go.
Keep it towards you, yeah.
Brian, I love innovation. I'm hoping we can do all this in person really soon, though. I'm kind of getting sick of COVID innovations. I want to meet people.
Agree completely. But I'm just struck by you could sort of outsource your or you give guidance worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, Maria, how much more comfortable did the last couple feel?
Much better.
She says
Yeah.
much better. Yeah.
All right. So you can imagine now, you could bring a 5-year-old in that's never thrown, that's getting ready to play Little League for the first time, hook them up in this lab, give them a couple tips, and all of a sudden you see how efficiently they move through that. Whether it be a he or a she, getting ready for baseball, getting ready for softball, whatever that might be. I think there's a lot of uses that can come out of this. And that's, 2 people in this video that have never thrown a baseball before today. Or at least I know Praneeth had never thrown a baseball today. I don't know how much Maria had played before today.
How much? Oh, never, apparently.
Never.
Both
So
of
two
us.
people that have never thrown a baseball, and we're able to teach them remotely during a pandemic. That's pretty cool.
So as we're going here, I would like to invite the participants to please either raise your hand or sort of chat here if you have sort of questions as we continue to get our next 100-mile-an-hour pitcher here. So one of the questions Steve just asked, I love the Immersion Lab, is this scalable outside of the Immersion Lab? It's how do we, so certainly in the lab itself, there's the ability to do motion capture and there's the ability to do physiological monitoring. Todd, like how do you, like what are the pieces that have to come out of the lab? Like what can we do in the lab versus what do you need on the field? Is there a balance there?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the rehabbing pitcher, I can get a lot from doing it in the lab. Steve, to answer your question, that's the first thing I asked was how much of this can I move to my bullpen? All right. So that our kids are going full speed, throwing to a catcher 60 feet, 6 inches off our mound, that sort of thing. So, the question is, the motion capture is a little tough. So Praneeth, I'll let you answer that because you answered it really well for me. Right. How much we can move outside, and as this continues to evolve, if we find other uses for it on campus, then I think more people get behind the project and we can do that. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'd love to see a sports science lab that exists on campus somewhere. I think it's a no-brainer. We should, we design this stuff anyway. We should be the forefront of that. So hopefully this is maybe the kick in the butt that project needs to just get everybody together in the same room and see if we can, all benefit each other.
Yeah, so I can speak to the technology a little bit. So the physiological monitoring tools, they're very easy, right? So they're very transportable. All I need is a computer, really. And the motion capture system, you find the smaller versions of the capture system that you can do in the field. And actually, they're surprisingly not that expensive. They're like $2,000 to $5,000. But they're not going to be as accurate. So a nice combination of ideas or tools would be, so you come to the lab to try to figure out exactly what you want to measure, and then you bring the more portable version out to the field to measure just those things. So we get more flexibility in the lab, and then we narrow down, or we make it more concrete, and then we go out to the field.
Good. There was a question. Let me go with Robert Hupp first, and then Steve. I'm assuming if you have your video on, you're asking a question. So Robert, please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I just a quick introduction. I'm an assistant varsity fencing coach. The head coach is sequestered in Poland, but he and I have been talking about a bunch of things, prior to even knowing about this. So we would probably also want to put a sensor on the tip of the fencing weapon without changing its balance. And we'd also, because a lot of it is, some of the things we've talked about is at what point do the different components, the acceleration of the point, the acceleration of the arm, the acceleration of the core off the back leg. So we'd want to measure that, but then we would also want to instrument another fencer to see how they would react. Because the distance is fairly close. We would want to see what the opponent is seeing in terms of what they're going to react to. So can we map two people and also map the implements as well?
Of course, yes. The answer is yes, as long as we can put a marker. If you're allowed to put a marker at the tip of the sword, it'll be easy. Alternatively, we can also put a tape.
Okay. I mean, we would want to do it in the lab. I think it would be a little bit awkward, although the fencing room, is certainly self-contained. MIT's got a state-of-the-art fencing room, but we'd want to do the most accurate capture. And so since we're doing this, it's more of, for the purpose of this, we would even just probably design a special weapon that we could mount the tip on, but we'd want to have the same mass and the same characteristics of a competition weapon, because that's what they're going to be using.
Yeah, they weigh almost nothing.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
good.
So I
Excellent.
just want to thank you, Robert, for your question and sort of participants. The Immersion Lab, just to re-summarize some of the things that we've been chatting about, is a shared and open facility. We look forward to working with Todd and with Robert and the other coaching staff to indeed make a biomechanics center of expertise at MIT, but it's open to you, to the MIT community, to the off-campus community for education, for research, for coaching. So do reach out to Praneeth, to myself, to the other MIT.nano staff, and Todd and Praneeth. Thank you very much for the captivating discussion today. And Praneeth, hopefully you're on your way to a 100-mile-an-hour pitch, and Todd, yeah, I guess you'll go out with him when he's there. In about a month, we will have our next Immersed series. Next will be Immersed in Photogrammetry. So we'll hear from Eric Perret, who's a visual artist. We'll be mixing bullet time and light painting using 176 cameras together. We have a sequence of the photogrammetry, athletics, education and research, and more to come, but looking forward to your ideas as well, to the community engagement for the things that you would like to be immersed in. And with that, Todd, again, thank you very much for working with us and for your time, and the best of luck for the season. And Praneeth, here's to your 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Everybody, thank you and have a good day.
For having me. I hope some people got some things out of that. That was a lot of fun to participate in. So thank you very much.
Great.